It's absolutely amazing. I'm just tongue-tied just talking about it, thinking about it.
Yes, I'm a favorite now.
We're almost there. You can say it. You can say it. Welcome to the Extraordinary Being Movement, where we inspire you to take action, influence you for change, and motivate you for success. Hi, I'm your host and coach, Len DeCarmine, and we have an extraordinary show for you today. We are going to be talking about how to create a winner's mindset with our special guest today. But before we get into that, I have to introduce, of course, my two favorite co-hosts, the one and only Christopher Shiver.
Yeah, I'm first today.
I try to be fair on this show. Chris, what's
Yes.
going on?
I'm excited today because today we're going to talk about my favorite sport, and that's football.
Football? Is it football or soccer?
I don't know. That's a good question. Actually, I learned today that there was a sport already called handball. I had no idea it was existed.
Well, you learn something new, buddy.
Every day.
Every day. And we'll get into why you never heard about handball here in a moment. Hey, Fred Martinez, what's going on?
I'm doing great. Hey, Chris, get off the couch. Start playing.
There you go, man. Play the game of life. Get out there.
It's a medicine ball, man.
You know, there's more to sports. Like gaming is not a sport, man. I'm being honest.
I'm
Right,
insulted.
video games is not a sport. It's because you can play Wii bowling or something. It's not a real sport. So let's talk about this winner's mindset. Let's talk about actually doing sports, the benefits of it, with our special guest that we have today. We have the one and only Danielle Fagan. She's here with us today. She is out to make a difference in the lives of youth athletes on and off the field, learning life lessons through sports. She's using these life lessons to train the next generation of players, coaches, and ultimately creating champions in business, sports, wellness, and life. Danielle, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I appreciate that. Look, Danielle, I was reading your bio. I have to say I'm super impressed. You're a former Division I soccer and softball athlete, and in 2007, you climbed Kilimanjaro.
Yep.
Share more about that.
Yeah, so it's funny because it wasn't even anything that was like a bucket list item or anything that I had dreamt of doing. And I had met some coaches at a soccer coaching course the year before, and this mass email went out saying, hey, who wants to climb Kilimanjaro and go on safari in the Serengeti? And I was like, oh, I do. You know, why not? Which is, you know, it's interesting. I mean, I just kind of jumped at it. I'm not a real spontaneous person. I'm a planner and I organize everything. Now, I did spend the next year planning this trip, but yeah, it was awesome. It was probably the most physically, emotionally, mentally challenging adventure of a lifetime. And, you know, people ask me, oh, would you do it again? And no, not because I didn't like it, but it's kind of like, you know, now I checked that off and what's next. But yeah, so like I prepared, I planned, but there was really no way to really plan for it and prepare for everything. And what's been really cool too, is it's interesting you bring that up, is I then used that trip to map out an entire season for my high school team, my high school soccer team that I was coaching. So that fall, so I went in February of 2007, and then that fall, I used the entire trip to map out our whole season. So we set goals as if we were climbing Kilimanjaro, and just mapped our entire like preseason, regular season, postseason, right onto that. And I got to share my experiences with the team and use everything that I learned climbing a mountain and showing them how we're climbing a mountain as a team together to reach the state finals.
No, I mean, this is awesome. You're the first guest we've had that has done something like this, that has climbed this huge mountain. And, you know, I'm impressed by it. I mean, you know, that's awesome. Absolutely awesome. When you were on that journey, did anything like really come to you? Were you like any type of mindfulness or enlightenment, you know, that resonated with you while you were climbing that mountain?
Oh man, so there were so many moments. Hard to distill it into like one thing, but
No, you can share a couple of them.
okay. Well, so one thing that really stood out was, we climbed it took 4.5 days to get to the summit, and we climbed. So the first 4 days, it was, it was kind of like being on a hike. I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it, but they were all different climates and whatnot. But then when we got to base camp, and when we did our summit, we left at 11 o'clock at night. And because with the goal of getting to the summit at sunrise. And as I'm walking up the mountain, and you're walking at like a snail's pace. And I had two thoughts I had three thoughts while I was walking. One, when are we going to stop and go to the bathroom? And it was like 15 degrees below. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and they kept yelling out potty. And I'm like, oh, this is so great. We're going to get to stop and go to the bathroom. Well, they had nicknamed the guy that one of the mountain guides potty. So the whole time I'm thinking, oh, this is great. We're going to get to go. So there was that, like, okay, how do you control your bladder while hiking up a mountain in -15 for 6 or 7 hours? Then my other thought was, now I grew up in Massachusetts. I live in the suburbs of Philadelphia right now. My other thought was, wow, I did this trip a number of times because this is where I went to college. So I could drive back and forth with my eyes closed. I'm like, wow, in the amount of time it takes me to drive from my hometown to college is the amount of time it's going to take me to walk to the top of this mountain.
Wow.
And yeah, and I was like, wow, I cannot believe I'm just going to be hiking for that long in the pitch black. Again, not like that, not like these are like crazy epiphanies that I've had. It was just more like, wow, how oversimplified can we become? Like, I thought about like driving in a car, having to go to the bathroom, like a basic need. And then it became really clear that survival was a big deal. Like everything that I had taken for granted, because we got to about 600 feet from the top, and we could see the sun coming up, and then the rest of that last stretch from right where we were, I forget what it was called, but all the way to the top you're on the glacier, which is melting, and they said it was going to be melted by 2020, which seemed like a long time away in 2007. But anyway, it was literally climbing up a glacier.
Wow.
And I mean, I was walking at a snail's pace at this point. I mean, it just like one step at a time. It took forever to get to the top. But then getting up to the top, and then literally it was like you're looking out over, it looks like the world. And there's nothing up there except, the summit with the sign. And it's just a glacier. That's it. And then people walking up and walking back down. And really what became the survival part is one of my friends on the way back down slipped and was falling and was just like careening down the side of the mountain. And it's not like when you're on a ski slope and there's barriers or even like caution tape or anything like that. I mean, you're just climbing. And I mean, luckily she was able to catch a rock and she stopped. But I was just like, I didn't even panic at that point. I was like, okay, bye. Because it's like no oxygen up there. And it's like, you can't even process like anything. I was like, all right, well, I guess that's it. See ya. And, again, no great epiphanies, except just like how small I am. And it wasn't even like, yay, I made it to the top. It was just like, oh my gosh, I'm cold, I'm hungry, and I still have to go to the bathroom. Although one thing that I did notice on part of the climb, this was before the summit attempt, is the sky, because there's no lights up there. And the sky, I remember looking up at one point, and I turned to our head guide and I said, this looks like a planetarium. And he said, a what? And of course he didn't know what a planetarium was, but it's just like, it's like a sky I've never seen anywhere in the world, just because it's just so pure. There's nothing up there. And again, you got to remember, this is before this is before like we had smartphones and everything climbing up there. So it was like really being off the grid, and like you knew that you were off the grid because it was just nature. There was no like lights that you could see. It wasn't even lights you could see off in the distance.
You're making me homesick. You're making me homesick right now. Don't do this.
Yeah?
I'm from that part of the world. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I know exactly. The sky is.
Yeah, the sky. It's I even, you know, if my camera couldn't really capture pictures of it, but yeah, I don't know. It just becomes so simple, like water, food, you know, just yeah, and not to get like, again, not a big epiphany, just like, wow, what am I worried about?
The one thing that pops in my mind was hearing. In my mind, I start visualizing like crevasses that you have to go ahead and like there's a ladder and you have to walk across. Did you run across anything like that, knowing how the risk and the danger behind all that?
Yeah. So the scariest part of the entire climb, this was actually pre-summit. It was like the day before the summit. It's an area called like the Kissing Ledge or the Kissing Stone. And essentially what it is it's a very small ledge where like my whole foot couldn't fit on it. And I'm a small person. I'm 5'2". I have a size 7 foot. So it's not like I take up a lot of space. So that was an advantage and a disadvantage. And what it is that you're going from one edge to another, and they call it the Kissing Stone because you face the wall of the mountain. You're literally almost kissing it, because if you step back, you're gone. And so my foot's partially off the ledge. But here's the part that made my wingspan a disadvantage, because, you know, the tall guy that I was with, he was like 6'4". He could stick his one hand out and be holding the guide on the one side and then put his other hand out, and the guide so he always was attached. So to help him get across the ledge. Now for me, I'm holding on this side, but for me to reach the guy on the other side, I had to let go with my left hand.
Wow.
And in that moment, it was just like that, you know, like just, it's almost like, have you ever been on any of those like free fall? I mean, I didn't fall, right? But those like free fall, like amusement rides, you know, like where everything just drops in your stomach. I had that like internal, like the feeling. I wasn't falling. Again, I was just like, oh my God, I could actually die here. And that's actually one of the stories that I shared with my high school team. And it was like, I had to trust to let go on the one side, to grab the hand of the other, the guide on the other, and get across. And that was scarier than going to the summit, honestly. Like that, you know, seeing the glacier and my friend going down. Sure. But that was frightening.
And I love how you weave that with your high school students, because let's be honest, a lot of people in today's world don't know how to let go of their own control of the situation and then be able to trust somebody else to help them across. And really what's really awesome about that concept is that it's teaching us to be coachable, to be able to listen to others. I mean, that's just great. What did you see the changes in your high school students after that?
Yeah. And what was interesting too, is that, that was the year where, so the year prior, we were ranked #1 in the state, and I set the tone. I was super cocky. I'm like, we're going to win states this year. And then we were upset early on, and I took responsibility for that. But then, so coming into the next year, I was like, all right, we're going to be humble. And, gosh, talk about like climbing one of the tallest, one of the 7 summits of the world, the highest peak in Africa. And like, talk about being humble by, a mountain, and, sharing that with the players. And they even said too, like, we're not doing that again. We're not looking ahead. We're going to take every single step along the way. And then we ended up actually, we won states that year. And I mean, was it because I climbed Kilimanjaro and shared the story? No, but it was just all those little steps along the way. And then what was really cool, what I found out is, this year, I had reached out to one of my former players. I heard she had some serious medical issues. She's probably 30 now, if she's not almost 30, but late 20s, early 30s. I can't remember exactly what, but she had some serious medical issues where she had an MRI and had to get an injection so that they could see clearly in her hip. She ended up having a severe reaction to the injection and has been really sick for a year. And one of the things, I had reached out to her because she decided, she had kind of disappeared, and then she had posted on Facebook, oh my gosh, this is what happened to me, be careful. And so I called her and she said, I gotta share with you, what got me through this past year is you sharing that story of Kilimanjaro with us during high school soccer in 2007, because I spent the entire year climbing Kilimanjaro all over again. And I was just like, wow. Wow. And she's on the mend, but it was pretty serious. I mean, to the point where, she was having hallucinations, and because she ended up having, I forget what the name of it was, but it was like severe lead poisoning. So it went right to her brain. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I love just hearing this story, because the impact, not only did you climbing that mountain have an impact on you and a new perspective of things, a new appreciation, but it also made a huge impact on the other people that you share that story with.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with what you just shared with that young lady who was sick. She was climbing her own mountain in her own way, dealing with this illness and struggling through it all. So, I love you sharing this story. It's perfect, and this really sets the tone of the show here about having that winner mindset. What it takes to climb that mountain, what it takes to go on these journeys and these pathways, and being in fear, and stepping outside your comfort zone. And like Chris said earlier, being coachable and being trusting mm-hmm. in the process, trusting in that person is going to help and guide you to the next step. So this is great. Can you share a little bit more about your method of creating a winner's mindset and how you apply it to athletes today?
Yeah. So a lot of it is, like you said, it's not necessarily being fearless, but it's like it's embracing the fear. And one of the things that I always stress with players is taking risks. And a lot of times when I get players now, I used to have my own teams, but mostly what I'm working with now is I'm coaching coaches, and I have a lot of players in an individual, like one-on-one environment, like personal training. And one of the things I have to spend a lot of time with is undoing the fear of them making mistakes, because whatever coaches they've had in the past have yelled at them in a game situation, mostly, for making a mistake. Don't do that, do this. And, so they have to get out of that, like real controlled situation, especially in a game like soccer, because soccer is unlike a lot of sports where you're making decisions on the fly. There's no, like, as a coach, I don't have a lot of influence over the game except substitutions. And there's no timeouts. There's no plays that I'm calling. It's a lot of it is based on like what's happening in the moment. And so it's teaching players to trust their instincts and go out and just, give it a go. And then at the end, then there's just teaching them to self-evaluate. So we do a lot of individual goal setting. And for even if it's just for a game, hey, what am I going to work on in this game? What am I going to work on in training? And then a lot of self-reflection and self-correction and self-evaluation. So that's kind of like I would say the core of my philosophy. And then also just allowing players to play like their style, not put them in a box. And, like I even caught myself yesterday. A lot of times I'll say, I want you to do this. And then I corrected myself yesterday. I said, this player, I want you to I can't remember exactly what the coaching point was, but let's say, for example, I was teaching her how to strike a ball. I want you to lean over. And then I caught myself and I said, listen, it's not because I want you to, it's because when you lean over the ball, it's going to keep it lower, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
Right. Because sometimes it's like, well, it's because Danielle wants me to, or Coach Danielle wants me to do it. No, it's not really what I want. It's just, this is what's going to make you better. And then in doing that and taking the instruction, then how can we move forward? I have another player that I work with. One of the habits we're trying to break with her is every time I give her a coaching point, she says, I know.
Oh,
and
no.
what was great is yesterday, she caught herself. It was so great. I gave her a coaching point. She turns to me, she goes, I don't know. And she's 11, right? But it was so awesome because she's now like building that muscle on like catching herself. And I mean, she wasn't being arrogant or a smart aleck with me. It was just an automatic response. So it's kind of breaking. I spent a lot of time breaking up patterns and helping them create new ones.
I'm sorry, Fred. Can I just say, you're teaching them more than soccer skills. These are life skills.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. That's like, it's a holistic approach to coaching. And, I have another player who just got accepted to one of the best colleges in the country. I mean, she's super brilliant. I've been working with her. She was on my team when she was younger, and I've been doing private lessons with her since she was 11 or 12, and she's now, I think, 17, 18. It's been 8 years. I know that much. And going back and forth with her mom over text last night, and just like, I'm super, super proud of this kid. And she's like, oh, well, this is the reason why I want her to play soccer in college. I said, yeah, she's like, it's probably different from yours. I'm like, no. I said, here's what's so great about coaching for me is that I get to give parental guidance, but I don't get the eye roll and the argument because I'm not their parent, right? But I'm saying a lot of the same things that parents are saying to their kids, except, they don't listen to their parents.
Yeah.
So it's great. And I love to be able to teach them, about life. And even this one kid last week, we were outside. I was cold. It was freezing. It was like 15-mile-an-hour winds. The field was muddy as all get out. And this kid did not complain. She's a senior in high school. She easily could have complained. And she worked for an hour straight. And I even said to her at one point, I said, wow, I said, you are a trooper. I was so inspired and impressed by her. And she's like, well, I did complain. I'm like, no, you stated a fact that it was cold, but you weren't complaining about it. Mm-hmm. And she's like, yeah, I guess. But I don't think she gets, like, I was like, wow, like this kid is dialed in. And, if you knew her, you would never get that. But it's like, I get to create this relationship with players in a one-on-one setting and get to teach them stuff that, like, a lot of the parents, they don't know what we're talking about. So, I mean, a lot of times it's like, I mean, I hate to call it therapy, but sometimes it is, because these kids share a lot of stuff with me. So I just create a safe space for them to do that.
Janelle, you bring up a couple of things because I was a former Division I athlete myself also. And the thing is that I wanted to ask you, how do you teach where where the athletes are not going to dwell on that mistake? Because I've seen this where countless times where if a person throws an interception, they're going to go ahead and saying, okay, they chalk it up. You see it in their body language, maybe they're pissed off, but then they go ahead and then they recalibrate themselves, and then it's like on to the next play. But if you have that person that gets stuck in their mind, then it's like mistake after mistake after mistake. You see it a lot when you watch the NCAA basketball tournament. You can see, you turn off the sound, you can see who's winning and who's losing by looking at the bench.
Exactly.
Because of body language.
Wow.
Yep. So I've actually, nothing original here. These are all stolen from other coaches. One of the first things I learned, so I've studied a lot of former coaches, not former, I've studied a lot of coaches. So I studied obviously a lot of soccer coaches, but Dr. Colleen Hacker, who was the sports psychologist for the U.S. women's national team for the soccer team. One of the things that she worked with the team was it was called park it, where whenever they made a mistake, they would pretend to like crumple it up and they'd throw it in the parking lot. Right. Or they would just say, all right, they'd say in their head, park it. And they would just be like, they would literally park that mistake in the lot and they could always go get it afterwards. And then I've also done a lot of work with the Positive Coaching Alliance, where they actually have like a mistake ritual. And one of the ones that I love that I teach the most is it's the toilet flush, where you flush that mistake down the toilet. And with little kids and even some of the older kids, it's like we flush a mini toilet and they have to make the sound. But with some players, like some players, it might be just some action whether it be like I had one player that every time she made a mistake, she clapped. And rather than trying to break her of that clapping habit, I had her in her head say poof. And like, just like that, poof, when she clapped. And she would always kind of laugh at herself. So sometimes it was a physical thing. Sometimes it was the entire team. We had, with my high school team, we had two things that we would say. One was next 5, which was, we would just shout it out, which was focus for the next 5 seconds, 5 minutes. Or we would say NBD, which was just, this was way before hashtags, you know, it was just no big deal. And next 5, we stole from, so the most dangerous, if you know anything about soccer, the most dangerous times to be scored on in a soccer game are the beginning of the game, like the first 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes after you've scored or been scored on. So anytime someone makes a mistake, we would yell, next 5, next 5, next 5, you know, just to like refocus. So it's something that players will say to themselves, or it could be something physical. And I got one player, so great. I taught her this when she was younger. She's a senior in high school too. And I see her do it now when I'm working with her. She would do this, like brush it off her shoulders. She still does it. But like, I don't even acknowledge it anymore. She'll make a mistake and she just goes like that. And then boom, she's onto it. And so I have a lot of conversations about body language and, you know, how they react to it. And not just for themselves, but I said, you do not want the opponent to see your weakness. Do not let the opponent know that you're frustrated and upset. And then you could take that into life. You know, don't let your boss know you're upset. Don't let, you know, like those types of, any type of situation that would come up in the future.
Yes. Yeah, no, because you're right. It's so much of this stuff we don't learn. We never learn. It's amazing that your students get to learn this amazing stuff and get the benefit from it. And like from it sounds like you just love your job. You love what you do.
I do. Yeah, I do. I was out on the field this morning. It's been unseasonably warm here this weekend in the suburbs of Philly. It's been in the 60s, and then we're about to get a nor'easter this week. But I was out on the field at 8 o'clock this morning with two 5th-year college players. So one's a senior and is going to get the 5th year because of COVID, and then the other one is just coming back from an ACL. And it was awesome. And they were excited to be out there too. They're like, 8 o'clock, awesome. This is like sleeping in for us, which shocked me. And and here's why, because I opened this up to a lot of players this morning, and they were the only 2 that showed up. But it was awesome. I love it. It keeps me young. Everybody else is aging that's around my age except for me.
Hey, Danielle, what do you teach the athletes about losing? Because I know that's how I reframed things differently through my years of being an athlete. I would be really down on myself. I would use it as my fuel. Now what I'm doing is I'm just competing against myself rather than competing against others. So what are you teaching about like winning and losing? Because, you know, you can see the positive sides, like win, but then also too, other aspect of saying, as long as you put in the effort and you can hold your head up high, that I did the best I could, because competition, that's one thing I love about competition, because everyone's going to rise up to the top and you're going to either win or you're going to lose. But the thing is, as long as you know you want that, you put in the effort, then you can hold your head up high. So what do you teach your students?
Yeah, so I have what's called the 24-hour rule. And what that is that, you know, 24 hours after a win or a loss, you've got to be over it. You know, if you win, you could celebrate for 24 hours. I recommend you don't take that long, right? And if you lose, you can do whatever you need to do for 24 hours. Be upset about it, write it down, whatever. But get over it in 24 hours. And that's the limit. It's not a recommendation to go that long. So that's one thing that I've done with players. The other thing is taking a look at a loss or a mistake, or, you know, or you just didn't, like, sometimes players will say to me, oh, I just did not have a good game, or I did not take advantage of the minutes that I got. And so then we just break it down and we look at it from a standpoint of, okay, well, what did you learn from that? And what can you do differently next time? The other thing I did one time, I wanted to have a bonfire, but I didn't think it would, you know, I didn't think I would get the permits for it. So I brought my my paper shredder in one time with one of my teams, and I had them all write down. I handed out, you know, paper and pens, and I said, all right, everybody write down anything that's bothering you, whether it be from school or from the last game or practice or your boyfriend or your parents, anything, write it all down. They were like, okay. And they didn't know that the shredder was in the bag. And they were just like, why are we doing this? This is ridiculous. And then I took the shredder out and they stood in line and they all shredded their mistakes. And it was so awesome. It was so effective. They were like, can I have another piece of paper? I have other things I forgot to write down.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and then sometimes what I'll do, especially with the little kids on the field, like, because a lot of times they come off the field distraught, they're just so upset with themselves, is I'll never forget this one little girl, Emily, this is years ago now, she's in college, is I put my hands out like this. I said, Emily, whatever it is, put it in my hands. I'm going to put it in my pocket for you. I'm going to hold that for you. And after the game, if you want it, I'll give it back to you. You know, you can do a lot with imagination with little kids because they love that. She might have been like 8 or 9 at the time, maybe 10. She's like, all right. And, you know, I took it from her. I mean, she never asked for it back, but I mean, honestly, I probably have pockets full of all sorts of mistakes and upset and anxiety from players over the years and sometimes, you know, there are things where, like, it just like in the moment, I'll come up with something. I can't even really tell you what it is right now, but it's just, and even other coaches that I've worked with are like, where did you come up with that? I'm like, I don't know. You know, it just seemed like the right thing to say or do in that moment. And just not to so much diffuse the situation, but just to like help the player refocus, reframe, calm down, whatever it is. And then, and we've done a lot with my older players. We've done a lot with journaling and whatnot and tracking, like, oh, well, how did I feel about this? And what can I do differently next time? But yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about this one.
You know what? When you said that, that really like touched me because I've had coaches that were relentlessly, I'm just going to say they were just assholes. Yeah. And to this day, where it made an impact on my life. I had a coach back when I was like probably like 10 years old playing Little League. The coach ended up with practice. He would always throw the bat against the fence and always yell at us. But I remember I was in a game. He asked me to bunt, or they told me you need to bunt because you can't hit the ball. And I'm like, you're not telling me I can't do anything. So I went and I swung. I struck out. And the thing is that he ended up taking that bat, threw it against the fence, and he says, you're not playing anymore. And the thing is I realized certain things in my life. It took me a while to realize that I got to be a hard ass on myself and always strive to be better. And instead of just kind of looking things in a positive outlook on life, he just made things look differently. So I commend you on showing that if you have an issue with something, you know, it's like your athlete's going to work harder for you. People don't realize that. That's a life lesson that managers can do that with their employees, saying, hey, I'm going to work harder. The employee's going to work harder for that manager because he know that I got your back. But instead of just cracking that whip and that type of thing, what are you going to end up doing? I'm going to go play with someone else. Because you see that a lot with like athletes. They switch from one college to another college because of the coaching. Maybe it's not, maybe sometimes it's not about the environment. I'm not getting playing time. Sometimes it's about the coaching more than anything else.
Yeah, players hop teams all the time. And just to be like totally transparent, this is an evolution. You know, I was an asshole coach at one time. So like when I was a young coach, you know, I could probably give you like 10 players you could call and be like, oh my God, she was so hard on us. And she yelled at us. And then not to say that like, you know, I'm not a yeller anymore, but there were times where, yeah, I lost my stuff and that became a learning experience for me. And, you know, there were times I yelled at a player or I yelled at a team or I was just like, whew. But the difference was that I came back around and I apologized for it and said, listen, here's what I learned from that. And I've mellowed out over the years. But even still, you know, like I have this one former player of mine. She's in her late 20s now. I coached her starting at age 11 or 12. And she even said, she's like, you know, in high school, it was tough because there would be times I'd yell out to her and she would just kind of look at me. I'm like, could you give me like a thumbs up or thumbs down or just acknowledge that you're even hearing me? And I was talking to her mom one night. She's like, this is so great because right now she just hates you. And I said, oh, okay. She's like, but this is a good thing that she hates you right now. I said, oh, all right, that's fine. She ended up being a captain and then going on and playing 4 years in college and was a captain of her college team and is a successful businesswoman right now. And I'm not saying that that was all me, but I really got to see this player grow up right in front of me on the soccer field, off the field, in leadership roles. And what was interesting is that her leadership style was very much like mine, which was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I've ridden players. I've been tough, but it all out of, I like to call it tough love, like all out of a sense of caring for the players, wanting them to be their best, pushing them as hard as I can. And I've learned new methods. So yeah, hopefully none of those players are in therapy now because of me. But yeah, I mean, so it's a learning process for me as well. And, you know, one of my idols, Pat Summitt, who coached many years, successful years, women's basketball, like just put the women's basketball program at University of Tennessee on the map. She has since passed from Alzheimer's, but she was also known as like one of the toughest coaches in the country. And I modeled a lot of my coaching style off of her because I read her books and I used to watch her on TV. And she, you know, you'll hear a lot of her players will come back and just talk about like what an influence she was on their life. Again, I'm not trying to like make excuses for the way that I acted towards some players, but that's a lot of that is my style, is that, you know, is like go hard and be tough. But I think at the end of the day, the players that have succeeded will tell you that they know it was out of like my utmost desire for them to be super successful in whatever they were doing.
I think the big difference is that if the coach is stuck in their ego of why they're doing it, instead of looking at it as it's better for the athlete, that you inspire them because you're pushing them, because life is going to be hard. And most people think it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows, as some people think. Like some of these kids think that things are so simple that everybody gets a participation trophy. And in reality, you know, I grew up with, you know, what do they call second place? They call it loser.
First loser.
Yeah.
First loser.
And so the thing is that with a certain type of mindset, which I love, is like you have to be hard. You have to go hard in life, because if you want something, it's not going to be handed to you. You got to work for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, participation trophies are like the bane of my existence. You know, I mean, I just about 5 years ago, I got rid of all my trophies. I saved all the little plaques on them. I think I might have had 10 trophies over all the years of playing. Now, a kid gets 10 trophies in the first year of playing, just because they showed up, or maybe they didn't even show up, you know, they're just on a team. So it's kind of really just diluted the waters of like, you know, a trophy. Yeah, it's a participation trophy. Drives me crazy.
This conversation has really given me insight though, because for my own son, he's only 4, and I really love him to play soccer because I love soccer too. And he loves it to death. I'll turn on Manchester United or something on television and he'll actually stop what he's doing to watch. So wow. I know he loves it at 4 years old, but the thing is now after this conversation, after hearing all this, I'm realizing now that I need to be a lot more diligent with who his coach is.
Oh yeah.
I need to be actually, because the way you're talking about how you do your course, everything, I'm just like, oh my God, I don't have to parent if I just send him to you. Like he's gonna get everything he needs.
Yeah, it's one-stop shopping.
God, I'm done.
But here's, you know, it's interesting because there's been a lot of research done, a lot of surveys and studies, and there's a precipitous drop-off in youth sports around the age of 12. And the number one reason kids quit sports is because they're not having fun anymore. And the number one reason they play is because they want to hang out with their friends. Yeah. They want to have fun. And if the coach is making it miserable for them, they're quitting. If they don't quit at 12, they're quitting at 13, no matter how much they love it. Or, they are switching teams and whatever. But yeah, that's like, you'll see this huge drop off. There's a lot of studies out there.
Interesting. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yep.
Hey, Danelle, you actually, when hearing about this, I really resonate with what all you're saying, because of like being an athlete. I've been an athlete since I was 8, so I'm 48. So I've been an athlete for 48 years in my life. And it just seemed like you have this lot of wisdom and a lot of stuff that you could be teaching non-athletes as well. So I want to go ahead and ask you this question. Based on your years of experience and your knowledge and that wisdom that you have, what can you tell your 20-year-old self if you can go back?
Oh man, my 20-year-old self. Work harder. No. Oh man, my 20-year-old self. I think a lot of people will tell you this too. I take myself so seriously. And I would tell my 20-year-old self, like, lighten up. And I mean, people who know me really well, like a lot of times, or when people are starting to get to know me, they're like, wow, you're really funny. Wow, you're like, you're really fun to be around. And a lot of times, like, the older I've gotten, like the more kind of closed off to that side, like kind of that fun, childish, like goofiness has like kind of disappeared, not because of like not because I wanted it to, but because I don't put myself in those environments anymore. And I think a lot of that came from, I was just so serious and so focused in college, in graduate school, got to do this, got to do that. And looking back, like, oh man, like what would the path have been had I done some things differently, or just even done things the same, but just had a different attitude about it, or about myself, or about the situation. Just to have more fun with everything, because I had a lot of fun, but it wasn't necessarily in those moments. Like when I was on the field, when I was working hard, I used to beat myself up. And this is like when I would be like lifting, for example, I'd be, and I needed to get 2 more reps and I couldn't. I'd be like, you suck. Come on. What's the matter with you? Like I'd say that in my head, or sometimes I'd say it out loud.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, come on, what's wrong with you? And then I, obviously over the years learning, like, that negative self-talk does not help you get those last 2 reps. So that's, one thing that I've brought into now, like when I'm lifting, it's like, come on, you could do this. You got 2 more. It's like, I've now like kind of flipped the lens. It's like, okay, well, what would you say to your players? Would you say that's your players? No, absolutely not. So it's been like, well, talk to yourself the way that you would talk to your player.
Love it. Because I'm the same way, really critical on myself, and then also just being the asshole athlete, where when I would run track, I would go ahead and write the other team. I would write their top athlete. I would write underneath their name underneath my eyes, and then I would just and then when I would be coming out of the blocks, because I would run the 100 meters, I would come out screaming and just explosiveness. And when I'm coming out is because it was just being that jerk, and then being able to I wanted that power, and then it also threw everybody off. And then when I would run the 400 meters, I would go ahead and come up to my competition and I said, eat dust.
That was after one.
Was this all in, where was this at? This was at New Mexico, right?
Yeah, this was in high school, and then this was in college. And in college, I quickly learned the hard way, because when I had that same type of attitude and I blow a hamstring, I'm beating everybody. And I'm like, I'm beating you. And then I blow a hamstring, and then I get up, and then I tried going up again. And it's like, there goes my season, just by just being stuck in the head.
Wow.
Yeah, I was stuck in my head for a long time over mistakes and all sorts of stuff.
That's kind of where I feel like, even in my coaching, I felt like that was always kind of like the issue. A lot of time we can't get out of our own way, get out of our own get rid of our own filters. Just for a second, just push the bushes out of the way and see the mountain for what it is, you know?
Absolutely. And I that's the other thing is I share that with a lot of my players too. I share about like what I was like as a player, and, the experience that I had as a player, and different, a lot of like, a lot of players nowadays, like, they don't know what my background is, and they don't know like what teams I made, if I got cut, or, was I a starter? Was I not? And how did I handle those different types of situations? And one of the ones that I share, going back to the very beginning when we talked about, taking risks, is I think it was about my senior year in college. I was playing softball, and I was a bench player in softball. I was not a starter, and there was a game, and I started, and it was like, wow, this is amazing. And I got in the batter's box, and strike one. I watched all the pitches. Strike two, ball one, ball two. Head coach, she's coaching third base. She calls timeout. Comes over. She looks me right in the eyes. This is scary. I was scared of the coach, who I actually love. But we were like, oh no, like I'm in trouble. She looked me in the eye. She says, "Do you know why you started today?" I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, I didn't know how to answer that in that moment. She says, "Because you hit so well in practice." And I did. I was hitting our number one pitcher in practice. I couldn't miss in practice the week before. I don't know what happened, but I connected on everything. And this was our number one pitcher. So I earned the start. And she says, "Okay, so you know why you're starting, right?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, because I hit well." She's like, "Right. I put you in there to swing the bat. Swing the bat." I didn't put you in there to stand and look at pitches. I was like, "Oh, okay." Now, I don't remember what the count was. It was close to full count. But I was like, I made the decision. I'm like, all right, anything that's close, I'm swinging, right? And I'm just going to put myself out there. And I'll never forget it. Line drive down the middle. It was a single. It was great, but I'll never forget it. I swing the bat. Those are like the three best things she said to me in 4 years. Swing the bat. And that was like when I really learned, okay, like I was afraid to strike out. Mm-hmm. And the whole reason I was in there is because I was good at swinging and hitting. So.
That hit me hard.
I love hearing that, Dan, because sometimes life is about just swinging that bat and taking action. Mm-hmm. Getting yourself out of that mindset of just moving forward, and whatever happens, it's just a learning lesson. If you strike out, hey, now you know how to do better next time. If you hit it, fantastic. Roll with it, run for those bases. So I love what you're saying here. And throughout this whole entire episode, your way of being is just extraordinary. And that's why I had you on as a guest, because, you talking about how you were once as a coach to how you evolved today, and taking ownership of that, and then even apologizing to those former athletes that maybe felt, didn't like the way you acted towards them, and taking ownership for that, it truly shows the type of leadership that you have as a coach, but also as a person. And that's absolutely extraordinary. And the way you are teaching these youth from all ages on how to get out of their mind, create new coping skills, how to overcome and anchor a new way of dealing with their issues that they can take into life. When they're dealing with something in their work space that they're upset about, they can go back to that time when you told them to flush it down the toilet, and just let it go, instead of harboring it on or parking it and then going back and reevaluating, or just, it just disappears because it's no longer there in the present because they let it go. So that is truly what you're truly doing is extraordinary, and getting these young athletes now to really take that on is beautiful. So I want to thank you very much for being here, for sharing that with us. Now, I do have a question for you in regards to parents who might be looking to get their kids into sports programs now. What would you recommend for them as a way to know if this is the right coach for them, if this is the right program. I know you dealt with parents, throughout the years. Any advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, do your research. Talk to parents of players that are already on those teams, or they've had experience with those coaches, and look and see, you can go on websites and look at coaches' bios and what their credentials are. And so that's number one. That's the easy part. But then go observe, look and see, how do they interact with the players? Do they really get the player? I had one new player that I started working with this summer. I think she was like 10 or 11 years old. And her dad came up to me and said, listen, my daughter's really shy. This is her first time working one-on-one. And she has a lot of issues with confidence with her coach. And, I spent an hour with her, and he went and just sat in the car in the parking lot. And as he was walking over the last 5 minutes of the session, and then she walked and got in the car, he says, wow, he says, I walked across the field and she's talking to you. Like, she's just like a little chatterbox. What happened? Like, what did you do? And for me, it's getting related to the player. And it's like sometimes I don't want to say getting down on their level, but it's like talking to a 10-year-old, like she's a 10-year-old.
Sure.
Not a 20-year-old stuck in a 10-year-old, or a 10-year-old stuck in a 20-year-old's body.
Yeah.
Those type of things. The other thing too is that, and I joke, I'm like, oh, I'm the kid whisperer, I'm the team whisperer. But it is. And he said, wow, this is huge. He says, because her coach doesn't know how to talk to her. And she, and it's just building her confidence. And that's the other thing too, that I try to translate to kids and parents, is that look and see what the coach is doing to improve themselves. Like, if I'm going to tell my players get better every time you step on the field, same with me. Like, shame on me if I'm not evolving. Shame on me if I'm not improving every single time I step on the field or in a classroom or on a Zoom meeting now, which is what I'm doing a lot of.
No, I absolutely love it. That's brilliant advice. It's, especially right there, that last piece. What is the coach doing to improve themselves as well? And I think that's huge. So that's awesome advice. Thank you for sharing. Fred, you have a question?
Yep, I do have a question. Yes, thank you so much. It's like you're a teacher right here.
Yeah, right? It's like, this is good stuff.
The question I want to find out is, being an athlete, and I hear this from people out there that are non-athletes, that they think playing sports does not give you life lessons. So I would want to get from your take that you can dispel the myth that you're not learning any life lessons, because the one thing I could see is that you can learn discipline. So what would you tell individuals, like parents out there saying, I don't want my kid playing sports because they're not going to learn anything? So what would you tell them?
I could go on for an hour about this one. The one thing that popped into my head, so my first job out of graduate school, the owner of the company played basketball for Villanova. Villanova, unbelievable basketball program, national champions, etc. And he said to me, he's funny, this is like a sports thing, called me by my last name. Fagan, you know why I hired you? I'm like, I don't know, because I went to Villanova. Yes, I did. Yes, because you went to Villanova, but because you played sports at Villanova. That's why. And if you look at just like on the female side, you look at the C-suite in organizations, any women who are, top executives in organizations, they played sports. And it's because of the lessons they learned. And then even, in my own athletic endeavors now, I'm a triathlete now. And I've done 2 half Ironmans. Did a half Ironman a year ago, September, in Augusta, Georgia. And it was hot. And when I say hot, it was like being on the surface of the sun. And just to get myself through, just for those of you who don't know, what a 70.3, it's 70.3 miles. So it's a 1.2 mile swim, a 56-mile bike ride, and then a half marathon, 13.1 miles. And that 13.1 miles, I ended up walking a lot of it because I had heat exhaustion and almost had heat stroke. But I'll tell you, just again, so it was an athletic endeavor, yes, but all the sports lessons that I had learned over my life are what got me through that race, because it was the endurance. And you can apply endurance to anything in life. It doesn't have to be another sport. And so, just enduring quarantine, enduring this, at the beginning of quarantine, we thought, 2 weeks, it won't be bad. Here we are months later, and we're looking at, they're calling it like the COVID winter. Like, how are we going to endure the 4 months coming up? So I'm taking everything that I've learned over the years as an athlete, and not only as an athlete, but as a coach. And it's like, what can I then do for myself, for my own well-being, and then everybody else around me? Because I want everyone around me to win. My family, my friends, my colleagues, my players, their families. It is all about winning for me, not just on the scoreboard, but in life.
Amen. Amen.
Love that. And I want to just give a final thought. I just want to let you know, I'm taking the 24-hour rule with me. That makes so much sense, because personally for me, I tend to dwell in the negative. So from now on, if I find myself thinking about something I did wrong or well, and I ask myself, well, how long ago was that? And if it was 24 hours ago, I'm done with it. I'm letting it go. There's more important stuff to worry about.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Fred, any final thoughts from you?
You know what? So many. I got 3 pages of notes.
That's awesome. I love it.
I'm always learning things. So that's a thing where it's like, I want to appreciate the time and the effort. I want to appreciate you sharing your stories with us. It definitely, it resonated with me because of what you were saying. It made me feel like, put me in, coach. I want to play for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Fred, anything on your 3 pages of notes that resonates with you?
Oh God, I could definitely say the one thing is about living your life where you're going to go ahead and swing, because most of the time we don't swing at life. We're just basically just want to just let things pass us by. And I feel like we all need to just swing at life, and then just realizing the issues about, like, when we have a setback. I like the whole idea of parking it. I like the idea of the flushing it. I like the idea of the 24 hours, because we have to celebrate our successes as well. We celebrate our losses, and realizing we can gain from that knowledge, and just realizing that being whatever it is, being an athlete, you have skills that you can put into from hearing from you, going from the soccer field to the boardroom. So that's amazing. And I love your journey of the aspect of the mountain, and how everything's a step at a time. And it's about trusting the teamwork. That is trusting your teammate, I should say. And that's a thing where playing sports, sometimes we don't trust our teammates. In order to be successful and to be a winner, you got to trust other people.
No, Fred, I absolutely love it. Danielle, you have been an exceptional guest here with us today. We are at the end of our show. We could probably be speaking with you for hours, but we'll have to just bring you back if that's okay with you.
Definitely. Would love to come back. I have a lot of free time now.
Okay, great. So I want to know how people can get a hold of you if they have questions about coaching, about your programs, want to connect with you. What would be the best ways?
Oh, there's so many ways. So my actual company is Soccer DCF, which is it's my initials, Danielle Christine Fagan, but it's also development, character, and fun. And you can see my logo here, Soccer DCF. So I have the website, Soccer DCF, and then I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Soccer DCF. You can reach me there, soccerdcf@yahoo.com. And those are the best ways to find me, and programs. I have a lot of online programs I'm going to be launching in the next couple of weeks, since I can't be on the field with players right now for the most part because of quarantine, and then we're getting all this snow. So at least I'm praying that we don't get it. But so I have a lot of online programs, and not just for the players, but also for adults as well. You want to win? Let's talk.
What a way to end it. If you want to win, let's talk. I love it. So anybody looking to learn how to win, give Danielle a call, reach out to her, like her, subscribe to her, share her. She's there as a resource for you so you can learn how to have that winner's mindset. We will have information about Danielle on our website, on all of our social media. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share us at the Extraordinary Being Movement. Check us out on our website at theextraordinarybeingmovement.com, where you can get information there about Danielle, our past shows, our current shows, and everything else in between. This is Len DeCarmine, your host and coach for the Extraordinary Being Movement. We want to wish you the best and thank you for your time. We'll talk to you soon. Bye now.